We're taking a look at this article on dailyfaceoff.com. What Matt Larkin did was he wrote about 6 potential trade destinations for Vancouver Canucks forward Brock Boeser. Now, as we had talked about yesterday, the Boeser versus Kuzmenko thing is real, and as a result, you have the conversations flowing through the media as to whether or not Brock is going to be a fit on said teams. Now, we've already seen a few other teams go out there and showcase interest, or not really showcase themselves, but we've been told that other teams are interested in different types of players. Colorado needs a center, actually. No, I think you could say they could need everybody because everybody is injured on that team. The Islanders need a scorer, the Devils need a winger, etc., etc. We've been seeing this pop up everywhere throughout the past few weeks here. But when it comes to these 6 teams, what I wanted to do was go over just sort of a basic overview. Of course, there are 6 teams listed in this article, meaning there are 6 different conversations. We've got 10 minutes of Canucks footage. Why don't we go out there and talk about each of these teams? Not go too deep into what Larkin writes about. If you want to see what his opinions are, then let's go ahead and leave the link in the description if you want to go ahead and read this. But the first team that Matt Larkin writes about that could be interested in a Brock Boeser trade is the Dallas Stars. Now, in particular, there is actually a trade idea put in this piece, but in all honesty, I want to save that trade idea for another video. There are a few Brock Boeser trade ideas that have been floating around there, and this is one of them. It's written about in the second paragraph, so you can go ahead and see what I mean when you go out there and read this article yourself. But pretty much, Dallas is a team that has been very strong this season. The team has stocked up on younger talent as well, meaning that if all the rumors go out there and prove true that they're looking for a top 6 forward, Brock Boeser may just be their guy. Think about Brock playing on a second line with a guy like Jamie Benn, for example. Sagan, Ben, Boeser? That actually sounds really good. Oh, man. I mean, of course, you have that first line going out there and dominating in Robertson, Pavelski, and Hintz. But everywhere else, you have other names that could be pretty good talents, too. Mason Marchment's a guy that I like. I like Radek Faksa, seemingly a little bit more than everybody else seems to. And, of course, the younger guys in the lineup as well. Wyatt Johnson, Ty Dellandrea recently making the team. So this is a good team. And I feel like a guy like Brock Boeser could really set that team over the edge when it comes to goal scoring and potential offensive productivity. And I know I'm saying it in a weird way because Brock Boeser has been a guy who, in my opinion, this year he's been so strange with his lethality. I don't really know if it's fair to say that he is as effective as he had been before, but obviously, 4 goals on the year is not going to help you out in that respect. Just go out there and watch any of the other videos we've made about Brock going over here. The next team that's written about in Larkin's Daily Faceoff article is the Minnesota Wild. Now, the Wild have been linked to Boeser for years. We have seen a rejected trade idea from a few years ago that would have seen Boeser get sent over to the Wild for Jason Zucker. This was in 2019, 2018-ish. I'm trying to remember the exact time period as to when that trade idea was floating around there, but pretty much the Wild wanted this, the Canucks said no. Brock has been an interest of Minnesota Wild hockey for a long time, and for good reason too. You talked about Minnesota goal scorers, guys in the Twin Cities, guys at North Dakota. It's like Fargo all over again. Brock Boeser is Minnesota through and through, and the Wild could use some more goal scoring. It's just, for Brock Boeser, the question remains as to whether or not he's going to provide that. Again, I've said this before, but Boeser was so different in his rookie season. He was such a good player, but I think he really is going to need a change of scenery to reignite that sort of offensive drive in his game. And what better way to go out there and do that than in your hometown team? Minnesota has been interested in Boeser for a long time, so if they go out there and try to make things work, despite the salary cap concerns, I would not be surprised, and neither is Larkin, who is the one writing the article. Next up is the New Jersey Devils. This has been a name that has been sort of linked to Brock for a while now, especially with their desire to add another winger. We'd seen rumors linking the Devils to a whole bunch of players out there. Conor Garland, Brock Boeser, and this team is doing so well right now. Larkin writes about how pretty much a guy like Boeser could be the next piece that puts them over the edge. How they could use a guy like Brock on their number 1 power play. Their power play isn't really all too strong this season, and Alexander Holtz isn't there yet. So why not go out there, get a guy like Brock, put him on your first unit, and hopefully try to claw back out from being 25th in the NHL's power play ranking in total. Now, in theory, that makes a lot of sense. My only concern, though, is you're really going to need to make sure that Brock is going to be able to do that. The guy has 4 goals this season. Long gone are the days where Brock is holding onto the puck for an extended amount of time, staring goalies dead in the eye and sniping it over their gloves. Long gone are the days where Brock can just take a centering pass from a center, walk right in, shoot, and score. Sure, he did that against Arizona, but still, he hasn't done that as much, and you're really going to need to make sure that you have a guy that's capable of doing that if that is why you're trying to make a trade for him. Having Jack Hughes feeding Brock Boeser? That's pretty scary. That could be the next coming of Hughes and Caulfield if everything goes right. But of course, the Devils are already so good, they could afford to get a guy who is a little bit more in a project type of scenario and just hope that for the next few months he can go out there and rejuvenate his game. Because if he does, then boom, baby, that's all the way up there. Absolute above and beyond New Jersey glory. The next team linked here is the New York Islanders, and we just made a video going over them and Patrick Kane, how they've been pretty alright this season, but they could go out there and still add that score because Lou Lamoriello did not do that in the offseason. They've been good, but if you have Boeser playing with Barzal, then all of a sudden things look really good. And I like that poetic nature right there because I think everybody kind of remembers that in the 2017-18 season, Boeser was fighting Matthew Barzal for the Calder. It was 1 and 2 pretty much the whole year, and I still stand by my assessment that if Brock did not miss out on the end of the year, he played the full season, his goal production, his point production, he would have had fewer points than Barzal, but his goal scoring, I mean, he was on pace for like 35, 40 goals in that season. Like, he would have won the Calder had it not been for Jake Verten and leaving the door open and having Brock Boeser walk into that after getting reversed hit by Cal Clutterbuck. Kind of funny how it comes in a game against the Islanders too, now that I think about it. But either way, Barzal and Boeser, if you take a look at the absolute best case scenario, this pairing could be absolutely beautiful. The speed and the playmaking and the vision of a guy like Barzal and the sniping ability of a guy like Brock. Obviously, that might not be what happens today if Brock goes over to a team like the Islanders, but if they really want to go out there and make a splash for a score, then Brock might be a pretty interesting conversation to be having. The other teams linked here, just gonna go out there and spoil it. You have the New York Rangers and the Pittsburgh Penguins. Let's talk about the Rangers first, because they're kind of in a peculiar spot. We'd also talked about this in the prior video on the channel, but they have not necessarily been all too great this season. Therefore, their desire to get a scorer type of player might not be where it was a few months ago. They need a scoring right winger, which is why they've been linked to Patrick Kane and a possible reunion with his old line mate Panarin. And let's just say if Patrick Kane doesn't get traded to New York because he wants to go to a cup contender, a team that is solidified in probably making the second round at the very minimum, maybe a guy like Brock Boeser is the extra piece you could use instead. Capo Caco, Lafreniere, there are a lot of guys that have been rotating around in the right side of the New York Rangers and their team. You still have Vitaly Kravtsov, whom you're trying to go out there and bolster up. But if Brock Boeser is the guy going over there, I mean, count me interested. I'd be interested in seeing what exactly the Rangers could give up and where they would place Boeser in the lineup, too. Gerard Gallant has had his fans, but recently they've been kind of withering away because this guy is going out there and coaching this team and putting out lines that are somewhat questionable, I guess you could say. And so a guy like Brock Boeser going over to a team with another sus coaching situation, I'm not really too sure how that is going to work out. And then the last team written about here is the Pittsburgh Penguins. And, I mean, look, the article suggests Zucker for Boeser, but, yeah, I mean, it pretty much brings up that Jim Rutherford is a former Penguin, and he might be able to go out there and capitalize on the Penguins' desire to win now by sending Boeser away over there. If it ends up being Zucker for Boeser, after all this gosh darn time that we had talked about that being a rejected trade idea from the Minnesota Wild, just for it to happen a few years later with Vancouver and Pittsburgh, then I'm going to be pretty shocked. Like, you tell myself from a few years ago that it's going to happen, Boeser for Zucker is going to happen, but it's not going to be Vancouver Mini, it's going to be Vancouver Pity. Ay, I can't believe I just made that joke, but either way, talk to the console your thoughts about this idea over here. Each of these 6 teams that Brock might be linked to in accordance to the Daily Faceoff article. The link will be in the description if you want to go ahead and read this piece yourself. I hope you enjoyed this video, and bye.